Good evening. Let me check my audio if it is working fine. You can let me know if my audio is fine. My voice is audible. You can answer me in text box, or you can answer me in chat box in YouTube. So we'll be giving 2 more minutes of time so that other people also can join. Let me check my audio if it is working fine. So I'll give 1 more minute of time so that people can join. So we started the live streaming 2 minutes ago. I hope my voice is audible. So just let me know in chat box if my voice is audible. Yeah, I think I'm getting messages that my voice is audible. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. So today's session will be a live session. I'll be taking on the agenda, which we have already prepared for it. The agenda will be as the below. The agenda will be, I'll be speaking about today's topic, and then I'll be speaking about my introduction. Then I'll be speaking about the interview-based questions which are being put today. Then I'll be speaking about which are the jobs available, in particularly clinical research. Today's topic will be on clinical research questions. Then I'll be speaking about what are the requirements, what are the qualifications, and what are the other requirements required for clinical research. I'll be speaking about that. And then I'll be speaking about the companies available, which will be hiring us. Then I'll be speaking about what is the future of clinical operations. Then I'll be taking live interview questions for your interview-based questions. Then I'll be speaking about what are the next live sessions I'll be taking. So this is the agenda which I'll be taking. So without any delay, we'll be starting our live. So first, I'm Mujib. I'm the founder and CEO for Clinosol Research. So I run an organization which is Clinosol Research, which is based out of Hyderabad and Bangalore and Vizag, and also in Canada. And I'm basically a pharmacologist. I did my master's in clinical research. I have overall of 16 years of experience. I have worked in QPS, Accenture, Parexel, Oracle, and then IQVIA. So this is my background, and from since 5 years, I'm running this organization, which is Clinosol Research. And coming back to today's program, the program will be based on live interview questions, which I'll be handling from the chat box. And afterwards, I'll be speaking about what are the different opportunities you have, particularly for clinical research and clinical operations, and what are the qualifications, what are the companies, and all those details I'll be speaking today. So without any delay, first out of this agenda item, I'll be taking this. what are the different jobs which are available in clinical operations? So most of people will say that I want to work in clinical research. Now, what are the options, possible options we have for clinical research jobs? So for one of the most important jobs, which people will say that they want to work in clinical research. So what is clinical research and clinical operations is to work at the site level, to work at the hospital level, to work at the sponsor on behalf of working at the hospital or a site. So when you take this as an answer, you can take it as a person who is called as who works under the investigator. So that is your clinical research coordinator. So this is the first job you get. The first role you have, clinical research coordinator, who can work under the investigator. So parallelly, you have one more role. So most of people speak about this role, which is called a CRA, which is monitor, trial monitor. So CRA is a person who comes on behalf of sponsor to make sure that the monitoring and the trial monitoring is being done correctly. So there is other people who works on clinical operations like TMF, trial master file. There are other team members who works on this clinical operations or project managers. There are other team members who works on supply chain management. So the supply chain management is the one who provides the randomizations or trial supplies for the investigator sites also. One more team which has been recently on talks is IVRS teams or RTSM teams who randomizes the subjects. One more team is investigator payment teams. So this many teams are associated, and there are pharmacists, clinical pharmacists also associated with your clinical trial sites. The pharmacist who works on dispensing and other things also are associated with clinical operation. Most of people speaks that they want to go into CRC and CRA. And some people now they are speaking about TMF roles, trial master files, where you can archive the essential documents in a particular folders. How you can archive the documents. There are some team members who wants to go into project management. Some of my students have worked in project management, supply chain management, and also in RTSM teams also. And investigator supply management is also one of the role, one of the job which is coming in picture now. So this is about the brief background about what are the possible roles you have in particularly to your clinical operations. So this is first thing which I wanted to touch base upon. And now what are the qualifications required? Because everyone knows that the people who are associated with clinical research should be qualified, trained, and experienced as per ICH-GCP. One of the principle of ICH-GCP clearly states that you have to be trained, qualified, and experienced to perform your activities, in particular to your clinical research. So most of clinicians or pharmacists or nursing or a dental or a BPT people are being taken into clinical research, including life science graduates like BScs and BTechs and MTechs in biotechnology or microbiology or life sciences. So this is about your qualifications which are required. Now, the companies who hire this, the CRC role is particularly for hospitals, site locations, wherein you go at the site, take the subjects, patients, enroll into the clinical trials. Now, coming back to the next role, which is your CRA role, which is the monitoring role, who works on your trial monitoring. So who works at the sponsor location, sponsor or CRO, sponsor or CRO, sponsor or CRO locations who work at and they do the monitoring of clinical trials. And the next role is your TMF, trial master file roles, who works at sponsor or CROs. Project management also works at a clinical pharmacist works at site. Clinical pharmacist works at site. Remaining all people works at sponsors or CROs. So this is something which is called as the different roles and their companies who hire us. So either you will be hired in CROs, either you will be hired in pharma companies, either you will be hired in IT companies, or either you will be hired in your SMOs, site management organization, or either you will be hired at the sites. So most of times clinical research jobs are not in IT companies. IT companies mostly focuses on clinical data management or pharmacovigilance or SAS or medical writing kind of a jobs. But site related activities, site feasibilities or site questionnaires and all those things will not be taken by your IT companies. So, but most of IT companies have this wing which is called as clinical research. Now, one of the most important objective for clinical research is to understand whether the safety and efficacy of the drug which you have proposed for marketing is up to the mark, and you have enough evidence that you have tested on human beings for its safety and efficacy. So then it is called as your clinical trials. So today's topic is more focused on clinical research topics and their interview-based questions. So I spoke about what are the different jobs which are available in clinical operations. I spoke about the qualifications, and I spoke about the companies which are available. Now, coming back to what is future of clinical trials or what is future of clinical operations. So now most of clinical trials will jump into virtual mode, or we call it as decentralized clinical trial, because everyone is speaking about decentralized clinical trials. Now, the decentralized clinical trials is virtual clinical trials wherein you don't need to go to a site to conduct a clinical trial. You can sit at home and participate into clinical trial. Patients can participate into clinical trials. And this kind of a clinical trials are called as decentralized clinical trials or virtual clinical trials. So now this is your future of clinical operations, virtual clinical trials. And the next biggest one is implementation of AI/ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, in your clinical operations. Clinical operations, AI/ML, how you have to implement it and how you can implement it. Next most important thing is blockchain technologies. Blockchain technologies is something which is future for your clinical trials, because patient centricity can be included with a QR codes where you can scan and see that what are the next possible visits we have for conducting clinical trials. So now this is a futuristic aspect. The trends will change into blockchain technology, wherein our jobs will be more of technology oriented rather than just taking a subject and giving a medicine and checking for the safety and efficacy. One more is drone-based dispensing, wherein the dispensing can be done to the patient home accurately with the appropriate temperature and its moisture conditions. So now that is what you call it as drone-based dispensing. And one more time, compliance of drug. So how do we know that we have given 10 drugs, but patient have taken 10 drugs is something drug compliance. So for this purpose also, we are coming up with latest technologies, which is called a smart pill, where you have a chip in the tablet, and tablet can give the message to the system that subject has really taken a tablet. And then sensors and wearables, the patient wearables like smart watches or fit bands or any kind of e-pros, patient reported outcomes, are being the future of your clinical operation. One more thing is IVRS technologies, interactive voice response systems, and chatbots like ChatGPTs, or the system-based responses for the subjects for understanding about the adverse events. So now this will be the future of clinical trials, like virtual clinical trials, decentralized clinical trials, patient-centric clinical trials, remote monitorings, or drone-based dispensing, smart pills, patient compliance, wearables, EHRs, EMRs, blockchain technology. All these are your future of your clinical trials. Now, with this, I think I have spoken about the jobs which are available. I have spoken about the companies where you can search jobs and where you can go for a job. And next, I have spoken about the future of clinical operations also. And particularly, these jobs are meant with regulations. In India, we have NDCT rules, which is 2019. Worldwide, it is ICH GCP, and for US, it is CFRs. So we need to follow all regulations while we are conducting the clinical trials. So any clinical trials jobs, if you wanted to go, you need to know very strong knowledge on the regulations. So NDCT rules, which is new clinical trial drug rules 2019, which is very clearly stated that how clinical trials should be performed in India is being clearly given. And one more time, ICH GCP, which is international standard, is being given. So now with this futuristic aspects, I am holding my topic, which is most important is how and what questions can be asked in interviews and how you have to answer these questions. For this, I would like to take my team members' help. They'll be taking from the live YouTube channel. So you can post your questions in YouTube. My team members will pick some questions and will give the questions to me, so that, or they'll read the questions to me. I'll be able to answer these questions. So, but before that, what questions can be accepted today is It's all about technical questions. I wanted to make sure that this session is for technical sessions on clinical research. Next topic, upcoming topics, I might take some HR interview questions, or I might take pharmacovigilance, or I might take medical writing or CDM or regulatory affairs interview-based questions. But today's session is particularly for clinical research, technical interview-based questions. So please concise your questions to technical questions, particularly asked for CRC, CRAs, TMF, or monitoring, or for your project management or investigator supply management, or your IBRS jobs, or your support systems, whatever questions you have, you can put it in the chat box. I'll pick the questions. Generally, interview will happen in two ways. One is live and one is online. So they might take in Zoom calls and they might take interviews in Zoom calls, or they might ask you to come for live interviews also. Now, post-COVID, we have got so much of things that we have got very much importance of systems and system-based interviews. Nowadays, now interviews are being very clearly looked at how we can do it, interviews without having an interviewer. So just a system will be there, it starts recording, and there will be questions which will be coming on the screen saying that, tell me about yourself. And you start speaking in front of system. And once system is done, it automatically records this and send it to the interviewer. Interviewer will just review the videos one by one, whether the candidates are good or not. And based on this, we will be able to select the candidates. So now based on it, we will be taking questions. What can be done in particularly with respect to this kind of activities? So I think we will be taking one by one questions. How can we handle this all questions? I'll maximum provide time so that I can answer your questions one by one. So now I am getting some questions. So I'll take one by one questions. So one of the question is, how do you handle protocol deviation during clinical trials? See, one of the most important thing in clinical trials you should understand is you need to follow clinical trial protocol, which is being prepared by sponsor, reviewed and approved by IRB and IEC or IEC, and also regulatory bodies. Now, when you are following the protocol to conduct the clinical trial, there might be situations wherein there might be a deviations of the subject related administrations or drug administration or a procedure or any kind of methodologies which you are conducting. Now, say, for example, one of the simple example I'm giving that blood sample has to be collected at 8 o'clock morning. But unfortunately, as per protocol, it has to be collected at 8 o'clock. But we have collected at 8:05. Now, the first most important thing is we should accept that the protocol deviation has occurred, that the protocol has been deviated for that particular process, for that particular subject, for a particular site. And we need to pick that data point, like, for example, 5 minutes delay of the blood sample. We will enter this as protocol deviation, saying that, okay, deviation has been done and 8 o'clock sample was being collected at 8:05. Now, this 8:05 sample, when you are clearly stating that protocol deviation is being done, then based on it, at the end of the study, 8 o'clock sample has to be collected. If 8 o'clock sample would have been collected, the result would be A. Because it was a protocol deviation, sample was collected as 8:05, then result will not be a result might be a B. But if you don't select or don't enter or don't calculate or don't collect the protocol deviation, then all this process will go in problem. So remember, one of the most important point is protocol deviations has to be entered and carefully considered and collected, so that at the later on things, we can implement this protocol deviations and we can tell that, okay, analysis is based on protocol deviations. I'm not saying protocol deviation is wrong. Protocol deviation will occur based on multiple situations. It might be a planned deviation or unplanned deviation, but protocol deviation occurs. So when it occurs, how are you going to enter the details? How are you going to implement that details at the end of study is something which we have to discuss. Now, when they are asking this kind of questions in interview, first try to explain what is protocol deviation, or try to explain what is protocol in interview, then explain what is protocol deviation, then explain what is importance of protocol deviation, in collecting the protocol deviation and understanding at the end of the study. So now I think with this explanation, the interviewer will understand that you know that protocol has to be followed, but some situations protocol might not be followed because there might be situations that unplanned and planned deviation can occur. And in that situation, you need to make sure that the entered information about the protocol deviation has been clearly collected. And that protocol deviation has to be analyzed at the end. So this is all the things you can speak about your protocol deviation during your clinical trials. So one of the thumb rule in clinical trials, protocol has to be followed. But situations will be that where you have to deviate a protocol, but collecting protocol deviation, handling of protocol deviation is so much important for us, because there might be deviations which will be accepted. There might be deviations which will not be accepted. Say, for example, protocol, as per protocol, subject has to take 5 drugs for 5 days, but he has taken only 1 drug. So might not be, this patient will be useful for my analysis itself, because he has to take 5 medications, but he has taken only 1 medication. So now in that cases, I think we cannot able to take that subject into clinical trial, and this answer which subject should be selected, which subject should be added at the final analysis will be taken care by your statistician and clinician during your clinical trial. So I think that's a very nice question to speak about protocol deviations and what is the importance of protocol deviation and how protocol deviation is being spoken. So I think I'm getting some more questions. I'm sorry. So next question, describe the difference between monitoring and auditing. So now this is very interesting question, because I have already spoken about one of the role which is being there is CRC, an investigator who conducts the clinical trial. Now, when investigator is conducting the clinical trial, the CRC is conducting the clinical trial. They are conducting the clinical trial as per your protocol. But whether they are conducting the study as per your protocol, whether they are collecting, recording and reporting of the data is being done as per the protocol or as per the GCP or as per the regulation or as per your regulatory requirement, we really don't know. So now for that purpose, we have 2 checkpoints for the sponsor. The first checkpoint is monitoring. The second checkpoint is auditing. Now, what is monitoring? What is auditing? Now, the first one, what is monitoring? So the monitoring, we call it as the act of overseeing. So it's a very clear statement which we give, the act of overseeing during the conduct of clinical trial. So when the clinical trial is being conducted, you will oversee what is being happening on conducting and recording and reporting of clinical trial data. Now that situation is called as monitoring. Now, but the opposite part is at the end of a study or for cause anything, then one independent examination is being conducted. One independent examination is being conducted for your understanding whether the clinical trials are being conducted or whether clinical trials were conducted and data was being recorded and reported and interpreted correctly as per your GCP protocol and regulations, then it is called as auditing. Now, as per my understanding, as per the regulations, it's a monitoring is continuous evolving process. Continuous evolving process, it cannot be done in one time. But auditing might be very few times which is being conducted at the end of the study. So now that is what we call it as auditing. So the act of overseeing is monitoring. Independent examination of trial related activities is auditing. The person who is responsible for conducting monitoring is called as monitor. The person who is responsible for auditing is called as auditor. And the person who provides the final report is called as a monitoring report. The person who provides a report of auditing is called as audit report. And all the mistakes will be given in your audit finding. So now overall, auditing and monitoring is the responsibility of sponsor. Any point in time, if anyone asks what is monitoring, act of overseeing the trials, whether the trial is conducted correctly or not. And auditing is the act of overseeing the trial, whether the clinical trials are being conducted and data is being recorded and reported as per your regulations, GCPs and FDAs, or as per your regulations. So now with this, I think I have taken nice question about what is monitoring and what is auditing. So now I have some more questions which are coming in. Now I will take this question, which is very interesting. How do you ensure the quality and integrity of clinical trial data? So now this is most important question. First, try to understand that the whole clinical trial agenda is to know the safety and efficacy of new drugs or devices or vaccines or whatever products it is. So based on this, the data which is being produced from human beings is so important because FDA will not come and see your patients. CDSCO will not come and see your patients. FDA or CDSCO will see only one thing. That one thing is your clinical trial data, which is being collected, which is being taken from the patients and which is being accurately validated. Now, when you are speaking about this kind of an environment, that how the data is being qualified or quality based, and the next one is whether the clinical trial is having integrity. So now there are two words here. First one is quality. The second one is data integrity. Now, when you are saying as quality, what is quality? Now, when we say it as a valid data, it should be a complete data and it should be a consistent data and it should not have any missing or it should not have any incomplete data. So in other words, we call it as the quality of clinical trial data will be based on ALCOA. So now what is ALCOA? ALCOA comes in your good documentation practices, which speaks about attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. So these are all things which data should have. Then we call it as, this is ALCOA. The data is ALCOA. So now this is what you call it as a quality of data. But now what is the integrity of data? Now, say for example, data is having ALCOA. It is attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, all words are there. But whether this data was being taken by validated instrument or not is a big question. So, for example, patient data was being taken from ECG. But that ECG was being validated or not, we really don't know. So if it is not validated, the data which is coming from ECG might not be a quality data, but it is having ALCOA, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, quality, absolute, everything is there. But the instrument which was being used was not validated, and the quality of data which is produced from that device might not be correct. Now, their integrity of clinical trial data is being compromised. Now, the quality is there, ALCOA is there, but the integrity of the clinical trial data, which is produced from the machines or ECGs or apparatuses or the methods or systems which is being used for clinical trials, is not up to the mark. So now then it is called as the integrity of your clinical trial data. So now what is quality of data? Quality of data is about ALCOA, having attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. What is integrity of data? Whether the data which is produced from the instruments which are being validated, then it is called as your valid data. So now this is the difference between quality data and the integrity of data. So there are two words. The clinical trial data should have very good quality and also very good integrity. Quality is ALCOA, integrity is the instruments which are being used for collecting of the clinical trial data has to be validated correctly. So now with this, I think I have taken one more question, which was on integrity and quality of data. There are some other questions I am taking one by one. Give me 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, so now what are the advantages and challenges faced during conduct of randomized controlled trials in clinical research? See, now this is the most important question. First, you need to understand the word called as clinical trials. Clinical trials is to conduct on human beings to understand about safety and efficacy. Now, the designs of clinical trials are different types. Now, one of the design is randomized design, block design, or stratified designs. So many designs are there. So, but randomized design is most preferred design. So, what is the reason why randomization trial is most preferred is because it allows or it avoids the bias. It avoids the bias. So then it is your randomized trials. Now, one of the biggest advantage for randomized trials is you have zero bias irrespective of caste, religion, and your richness, poorness, and the race or culture. Every subject will be same. Every subject will be same. So this kind of thing is considered to be your randomization. So randomization trials will be used randomly assigning of the subjects to avoid the bias. And what are the disadvantage of randomization? Most of times randomization does not have any disadvantage, but if you are taking a grouping of subjects, sometimes you might have a stratification, a particular stratas used, a box randomization should be used. In that situation, I think we should have some of the aspects to speak about box randomization and as well as strata randomization. So, but I think most of clinical trials are randomized clinical trials. So we call it as RT or randomized clinical trials, RCM. So this is what RCT, randomized clinical trials. We call it as randomized clinical trials. So I think I have taken some 4 questions. So first question I have spoken about what is protocol deviation and how to handle it during clinical trials. And then I spoke about the challenges and advantages of randomized clinical trials. And I spoke about the monitoring and auditing, and I spoke about the quality and integrity. So I have some more questions upcoming. So I'll speak about some more questions. So first one more question. Can you please describe difference between observational studies and interventional studies? So this is more interesting questions, observational and interventional studies. Interventional studies are called as clinical trials. Interventional studies are called as clinical trials. While observational studies are called as the studies which are being taken care by your investigator initiated trial at the hospital location for the academic research. There are no interventions which are being done. There is no change. There is no new indication which is being tried to understand. It's already existing things which are being taken into consideration. Then it is called as observational studies. Now, simple example is surveillance. Surveillance of the patients, surveillance of the disease, surveillance of the patients or surveillance of the disease. Then it is called as observational studies. But while you come back for a testing on new drug or a new device or a new vaccine or a new cosmetic product on patients, then it is called as clinical trials or interventional studies. So now this is something which is called as observational trials and interventional trials. So I think I have answered that question even. Yeah. So I have one more question. How do you handle adverse events or unexpected outcomes during clinical trials? See, remember, when you are working as a CRC, the first one more question which is being asked, is how do you handle the adverse events at the site? Say, for example, patient gets an adverse event and for example, it's just an adverse event and he came back, he ran to you and he said, I got an adverse event. So the first thing what you have to give is you have to stop the drug if the drug is causing the problem. And you have to start giving the treatment. So as per ICH GCP, one of the most important thing is providing the treatment to the subject. Providing the treatment to the subject about what adverse events the patient have occurred or how the patient have occurred, you have to give the treatment. And the second thing is you have to follow up till the adverse event is solved. So this is first thing. Once the subject comes to you with an adverse event, you need to first treat the patient. And you need to follow up till the adverse event outcome is recovered. So this is the first part. The second part is going and taking these adverse events and reporting to the regulatory bodies or sponsors. So in terms of clinical trials, it goes and reported to your sponsor, because you will not have direct connection with regulatory bodies in clinical trials. You might go to sponsor and say that, okay, we got an adverse event, which is your related to my drug, and this is what we have given treatment. So based on it, you have to report the adverse event. And the last one, whatever happens, the adverse events, if sponsor comes and says that, okay, we have identified some new adverse events, then you have to go and inform to all subjects that this might be the new adverse events which might occur to the patient groups if you continue to take this drug. So now this all things together, it is the process of handling of expected or unexpected, or let's be honest, it's unexpected adverse events. So during clinical trials, how do you handle unexpected adverse events? Is first is giving treatment. Second one is reporting this and taking appropriate action of this particular adverse events to the regulatory bodies or to the sponsor is called as unexpected adverse events. So now most of times the adverse events, if it is serious, then only we will take care of the adverse events. If it is non-serious adverse events, we might not take very seriously about non-serious unexpected adverse events. But if it is serious adverse or serious unexpected adverse reaction, then we might take into consideration about how we have to give treatment and how we have to provide this to reporting to the sponsor or regulatory bodies. Okay, so now I think I'll take more questions. So advantage of randomization, deviations, and observationals, and monitorings, and integrity, unexpected. Okay. Now statistical analysis. Wonderful. So I think this question is very difficult question to answer. What is statistical analysis? What is the role of statistical analysis in clinical trials? Because see, one of the most important thing is we can't test the drug in lakhs and lakhs of patients. We can test in small number of subjects. And when you are testing the subjects, small number of subjects, how you are going to analyze your drug comparing to another drug, test drug compared to reference drug. On what basis you will have a hypothesis? On what basis you will give a final end result? On what basis you put your sample sizes? So first, statistician plays a role that what should be your sample size? How many subjects should be taken into clinical trial? And the second point is, what is your hypothesis? So what is being compared with what? And the third thing is the data points which are being used. What are the safety data points? What are the efficacy data points? How are we going to formulate the tables, tabular formats? And final thing is, how are we going to interpret the result? Final analysis report, how are we going to give? Then this 4 or 5 parts are being taken care by your statistician or the statistical or statistician in clinical trials. So the role of statistical analysis plays a major role in clinical research industry to design, to put hypothesis, to collect the data, to what extent the data should be collected, and finally to give the final result. We need to have your statistical analysis. Now, one more question: steps involved in adverse event reporting in clinical trials. See, as already I have said that if the adverse event is serious, in nature, then you need to report the cases or you need to report the adverse events to the sponsor. So during clinical trials, investigator, if any serious adverse events, it has to be reported immediately to the sponsor as well as IRB. And from sponsor to the regulatory bodies, it will be going and reported. And if it is in case of death, there is a death calculation also which is being given in the NDCT rules or compensation calculation in case of death. So only in NDCT rules, it's very clearly defined that what should be the money to be paid to the patient in case of the adverse event is serious and it falls into your death situation or death scenario. So this is one more thing, that how do you calculate? How do you take a calculation on death situation or death scenario? Then it is called as your handling of serious adverse event. So serious adverse event, how do you handle it? Once the case is being reported, to the sponsor and IRB, they will put appropriate actions to be taken and then they will report it to the regulatory body. So subject will report to investigator, investigator will report to sponsor, sponsor will report to regulatory body, investigator also will report to IRB and IEC. Okay, so now I'll take one more question. I think there are so many questions because I think we have already taken so much of time. So I'll take last question and then we will see the other questions in upcoming sessions also. Okay, so there are so many nice questions. Which one to be picked up is very difficult. Okay, let me take this question. So what are the factors should be considered when designing of clinical trials? The factors to be taken when you are designing a clinical trial. First factor is what is your drug product? First factor, what drug product you are taking? What is the disease product? How many competitor drugs are already available? How many patients are available? What are the data points to be collected for efficacy and safety? And then what is the lifespan of the patients? What is the duration of the drug? And what are the endpoints of the drug? And how many subjects are available for that particular clinical trials? So all the situations will be taken into consideration while you are designing clinical trial. But now the latest clinical trial designs, most probably, I think sometime from now, I'll be taking this session also about the latest designs of clinical trials. One of the most important part is we are looking at adaptive designs. We change the designs in between the clinical trials, and then we put latest updated designs of randomized clinical trial. So those kind of situations will be doing it in adaptive design, and basket design is one disease, multiple drugs in one disease. So basket design, umbrella design, virtual clinical trials, and quality by design. So there are so many latest clinical trial designs which are upcoming, which can be used for designing of trials. But now currently designing of trials are being done by randomized, blinding, and active control or placebo control, randomized. So this kind of trials are being designed based on the availability of the design, like parallel design or crossover design or replicate design, or your single blind, double blind, or triple blind, or parallel, or open label kind of designs are being done. But whole design will be depending on therapeutic area, patients, and outcome, endpoints, data for safety and efficacy. All those things will depend on you, and your objective of trial also will take a part in your understanding about design of clinical trials. So I think there are some other questions which I'll be taking probably in next session also. So because I have taken 45 minutes of a live session today. So today we discussed about multiple 5-6 questions, and also we discussed about different roles. We discussed about different companies, and we discussed about latest trends. And now continuing to this, I'll be taking every weekend Saturday one live session, which I'll be doing in this kind of live event, wherein I'll be answering some 10 questions on each topic. Today, we have taken clinical operations or clinical research. Next week, I'll be taking clinical data management on Saturday. And after that week, I'll take pharmacovigilance or medical writing or regulatory affairs. Every week on Saturday, I'll be taking a live session wherein I'll be speaking about interview-based questions, and also the future and the latest upcoming trends and latest designs for particular aspects. So I think with this, I will stop my live sessions. I hope this was useful live. Can anyone give the feedback and the questions which are being asked? We will get back to you with the answers. You can connect with our team. Our team will be able to answer your question in a mail or a WhatsApp. If you provide with your contact details, our team will be able to provide the information. So, but feedbacks anyone have? Is this sessions in this way live will be useful? You can give the feedbacks in comment box, and we'll be meeting with one more live in next week. With that, I think thank you so much for holding today. Because of this was so technical session, and I have taken so much of technical aspects today with interview-based questions. But you guys can give feedbacks, or you guys can give your comments, that session, how it was there and how it can be taken forward in a nice way. So till then, have a nice, wonderful day, and Happy New Year.